A brand new patch for F1 24 has just dropped, 1.10, and with it, the first F1 2024 team visual update and the brand new Formula 2 cars. For the first time in the F1 game, we're getting a brand new Formula 2 chassis, along with obviously the new season updates and drivers, including Ollie Bearman and Kimi Antonelli as teammates, and we're even getting some preview content of doing in the Alpine and a chance to relive Bearman's Jeddah substitute race in the Ferrari. So for the first part of this video, we'll be looking at Formula 2 and the second half delving into those F1 team visual updates. But here is a real nice comparison between the old F2 chassis and the new one and what they look like in the game. Obviously, we've seen them plenty in real life, but it's cool to finally see it in the game and how different it is kind of close up on your screen in the F1 game, especially the rear wing. I mean, that thing is massive. It's definitely one of the first things you notice on these cars when you compare the two, along with, you know, smaller kind of subtle updates to the side pods, the engine cover being slightly smaller, less of a shark fin going on, and then the entire front section quite different as well, with a very F1 style front wing look. And now we're just going through all the different liveries for the different drivers. Obviously, Formula 2 has always been very unique, where in the same team you can get such different liveries because these F2 drivers are backed by different companies, different sponsors, etc. And I think this F2 update not only is very exciting because we get an all-new chassis for the first time, it's not just a livery update and a roster update like it has been in previous F1 games when we've got the F2 update. I think also because this year specifically, F2 itself in real life has really been popping off, really exciting. The championship standings itself has been really interesting to watch, and then obviously the drivers themselves, the actual grid itself is stacked with so much great talent, and we're getting quite a few of them being promoted to Formula 1 all in 1 year going into 2025, of course. So like I said, I think compared to previous times where we've got an F2 update where I've thought it's kind of cool for a little bit, for like 1 week to check it out, and then kind of, you know, the excitement wears off. I think this one is way more exciting because you have a more relevancy of some of the drivers to the F1 grid, and of course all these drivers then, if unfortunately you have to start a new save, but if you start a new save for career mode, would be available in the pool to be, you know, promoted to F1, whether it's a driver career you're doing, or if you play my team this year, then you could sign them and promote them, you know, yourselves into Formula 1. But it's, like I said, a good talent pool compared to previous years of F2 where it's felt a bit weak, I can't lie. You know, this year's been a very, very good year for talent in Formula 2, and of course, you know, drivers like Colapinto doing so well, you know, in his actual, you know, he's got a proper F1 drive for the rest of the season, you know, not having to wait till 2025. He's already there in F1, replacing Sargent, having scored points in his second race only, just proving the talent that is there in this year's F2 grid. So here we are then at Baku's, just with a little preview of the new F2 2024 update, driving as Kimi Antonelli, of course, the Mercedes driver for 2025, and it's the first time that we've got Antonelli in the F1 game, of course. You know, for example, his teammate Bearman was already there in the game as he had done F2 previously, so he was there. You know, obviously we raced against him as our teammate in driver career mode, but Antonelli, who's had this meteoric rise of skipping Formula 3, going straight into F2, it meant he was, you know, not in the F1 game, basically, until this update, basically. So the first time we're seeing him in the game, and unlike other junior drivers, he's only going to spend this one little update for the rest of the game cycle as an F2 driver, and then next year he'll be on the proper starting grid. You'll click Grand Prix, click Mercedes, and there he'll be alongside George Russell. But you know, obviously I thought we'd just do this little preview at Baku, since F2 was just at Baku. Now, speaking of the handling, because I know that's going to be a burning question for people, is this car going to handle different to the previous generation of Formula 2? Because in real life, of course, they are different. You know, it's a very different chassis. The aerodynamics are different. Unfortunately, on the game here, in terms of tangible physics, there really is none. It handles the exact same as the Formula 2 2023 cars in terms of the underlying physics, the underlying coding is the same. It is just a visual update to the chassis. I assume going into the next F1 game, they would be looking to actually look into updating the physics and actually trying to simulate the new chassis and the actual new aerodynamic capabilities. But right now, it's just a physical change. Obviously, that physical change is an all-new car, rather than in all the previous iterations we've had F2 Sport updates. It's literally just been livery changes because the chassis hasn't changed from, I think it was 2018 to 2023 for all those years. Whereas now, for the first time, they've had to build a new car, a 3D model for the game, for the update, basically, along with the liveries, along with the roster changes, have you. But with such a big change to the actual car itself and the chassis, probably you'll feel, maybe a placebo effect of the car feeling different because it looks so different, especially when you're looking back at that gigantic rear wing compared to the very flat one that we had in the previous iteration of Formula 2. But yeah, I can confirm the actual handling itself is the same, which isn't necessarily a horrendous thing because, in my opinion, actually still the F2 cars actually ironically handle nicer and are more enjoyable to drive actually in many ways than the F1 cars. It's been like that since the very start of the game when we tried them out in the kind of F2 story little career mode prologue I did for my driver career mode series. But as you can see now, we're getting into the F1 update portion of this video, talking about the team visual updates for the F1 team. So we're starting off with Alpine, where they've changed a few logos round, with Track Racer logo added to the mirror stems, added Amazon Music logo to the halo, added Delphi logo to the rear wing end plate, and then there are tweaks to the front wing, rear diffuser, and engine cover grille. So these updates are a mixture of cosmetics in terms of sponsors, but there are actually some tangible, proper, actual car body updates. So, for example, the Aston Martin, a load of logos have been changed, but also tweaks to the side body shape, engine cover grille, front wing, rear diffuser, and airbox. Some teams having more updates than others. You can see Aston there clearly had more updates than Alpine, and for example, Haas have had literally zero changes whatsoever. So not even going to bother looking around that car. We then come to Ferrari, who obviously had a big change themselves in real life to the side pods, and that's finally now been replicated in the F1 game. Tweaks to various aerodynamic parts, side pod intake, rear wing shape, rear diffuser, and the engine cover grille. I always like, we had this on last year's game when Mercedes had the side pod update. It's cool to see the update so up close in the showroom when it's a big enough change like the side pod area. Like, really cool to see that real dramatic change in the Ferrari now, where it's like real life, where it looks a bit more like the Red Bull with the kind of uppercut inlet rather than the underbite inlet. Moving on to McLaren, also like Ferrari, having some tweaks to the side pod intake. They've also got a change to their rear wing, the rear diffuser, and the engine cover grille. A lot of the teams changing their rear wings and the rear diffuser and engine cover area. That's been a big area of performance gains for them in real life, and finally now a lot of it is being shown in the F1 game. So McLaren also kind of going for their version of the overbite rather than the underbite. A little bit more, less complex or less aggressive on the front end, but it works for them because they're clearly, overall the quickest car now at this point in the season for the first time since 2014 that they've taken the lead of the Constructors' Championship. That is a pretty crazy stat. I remember that podium at the start of the season in 2014 where they took the lead many eons ago now, it feels like. Moving on to Mercedes. So they've had some changes to the livery with the teal stripe now underneath the Petronas logo on the side pod, updates to other logos, switching positions of TeamViewer and Solero logos on the engine chassis, updates to the driver number colors, and tweaks to the rear wing shape. And I believe, it hasn't been noted in the patch notes, but I believe they've also added in that slight bump on the top of the chassis where they've made a change to the way the suspension is housed at the very top of the chassis, along with the rear wing change. Moving on to Red Bull, and unlike the teams around them in the top of the F1 Championship, they have had less of a change in this visual update. Just a minor shape adjustment, we're told in the patch notes, to the top canopy. I assume meaning that just at the top of the cockpit area where the engine kind of cover meets the cockpit area, where obviously Red Bull have had quite a fair bit of intrigue and insight since the very beginning of the season to all those different shapes and inlets going in. We now move on to Kick Sauber, who have a lot of changes to different sponsors. Too many to really go through and list, but you can just read them yourself in the patch notes. But then we've also got tweaks to the rear wing, the top of the engine chassis, rear diffuser, and the engine cover grille. Quite a few teams like to change their engine cover grills, even track to track, or, you know, in bunches of tracks, depending on that time of the year, where maybe it gets hotter and they're looking for different cooling solutions, or they're wanting to do something different with aerodynamics. So I don't know how exactly they choose which version to use. I guess maybe the nearest one, or the one they've used the most over the summer of Formula 1 races we've had. Now moving on to Visa Cash App RB, replacing the Visa logo with Cash App on the rear wing. A huge change there, as it's half their name for the other half of the name, and they've added an engine cover grille. We now move on to Williams, where they have some updated logos on the nose cone, suspension arms, barge board, steering wheel, quite a few different places, and they've also changed actually their driver suits and pit crew and race crew sleeves as well, with some different logos. They've got, in terms of tangible car changes, tweaks to the side pod intake, the rear wing, and the engine cover. So that rounds out the full F1 2024 visual update in this latest patch. And obviously we went through the F2 update earlier in the video. There have been some other minor tweaks to general bugs. Apparently AI now will manage their ERS deployment more wisely during qualifying, delivering hot lap times more representative of their race pace. That was a big thing, where they clearly weren't using overtake mode maybe, or, you know, they're only using hot lap, which doesn't maybe deploy as much as it should. So hopefully that difference from quali to the race will be a lot less and be a bit more consistent. I mean, to be fair, in all the previous F1 games, there's always been a little bit of a difference between quali and the race when it comes to the difficulty of AI and, you know, how they stack up. It's always been quite inconsistent, to be fair. It just felt way more inconsistent on F1 24, so that's a welcome change to maybe bring that back in, but still no mention of actually really delving into fixing the AI in the race when it comes to ERS trains, DRS trains. That is still going to be as it is, as it has been now for many, many weeks. But along with the new car content and bug fixes, we've also then got the start of their Season 3 in the Podium Pass. I mean, they're really trying to push the live service aspect of F1 World, but I just don't think a lot of people buy into, like for me, for instance, I didn't even know they were on like a third season of their live service thing, but hey-ho. But it actually is a bit more interesting than previous seasons, clearly, because I'm actually reading into it this time, unlike in Season 2. They've got a new time-limited F2 2024 elimination mode. So elimination mode is returning to the F1 game, because that was always something that I think everyone found a bit of fun when they brought it in as a limited time event. But now here in this Podium Pass season, it's going to be time limited to just F2 2024 cars, I believe. And then, as I mentioned right at the start of the video, they're actually going to have some content where you can relive and step into the Ferrari driving as Bearman at Jeddah and doing a challenge there, and also Jack Doohan in the Alpine. So we're getting an early preview of Doohan in the Alpine, and then getting to relive Bearman in the Ferrari without mods. Like, you can do it on console, have Bearman in the Ferrari, which I think is pretty cool. And then obviously along with that, there's going to be some other challenges that are added into the Podium Pass. I think Senna in the McLaren is one, but again, a lot of that doesn't really, I don't know, at least to me, doesn't speak to me that much to actually be that fun. Or, you know, even if it is a bit of fun, unfortunately, it's not very interesting to actually watch on YouTube, I guess, because no one really watches that kind of content. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below if you would like to see me do some of those things like Bearman in the Ferrari or Doohan in Alpine. Let me know. But that has been a full run through then, an update of the F1 24 1.10 patch, which is one of the biggest patches they've done so far in terms of actual content, with the F2 2024 cars coming in and the team visual update. Guys, if you have enjoyed the video, found it informative, then be sure to hit the like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below of the update. If you're around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.